What's going on, guys? As I'm sure most of you know, I've been using an AMD Radeon HD 6850 graphics card in my Hackintosh for about 2 years now. This has been a great card for my needs, but I've recently been wanting some additional performance out of my computer and also to be able to run a third display with full graphics acceleration. So with that in mind, I've decided that it's time for an upgrade. After reviewing my options and not wanting to break the bank, I ended up going with an Nvidia GTX 760. This card features 2GB of GDDR5 memory with a core clock of 980 MHz and a boost clock of 1033 MHz, as well as 1152 CUDA cores. Since I personally use a Final Cut Pro 10 workflow, these CUDA cores unfortunately won't help me very much, but the card will still perform great regardless. The card uses a standard display configuration of 2 DVI, 1 HDMI, and 1 DisplayPort, all of which will work right out of the box in OS X. The 760 requires a 500 watt or greater power supply, of which is delivered through a 6+8 pin configuration. Since I have an older power supply, I needed to get pretty ghetto for this to work in my system. More on that later. I went with the reference design because, in my opinion, it has the most professional look despite not having the best cooling system. With that in mind, I don't find the card getting abnormally hot even while driving 3 1080p displays and editing 1080p videos simultaneously. Jumping into the actual upgrade, the first thing to do is to obviously remove the current graphics card. I'll start by unplugging the single 6-pin power cable from my AMD Radeon HD 6850. Since this is a dual width card, it's held into place by 2 screws, which also have to scram to get the card out. Now that both screws have been removed, there's a little tab right above the PCI slot which will need to be pressed down to free the card. Not too much force will be required to pull the card out of place, but you'll have to have a pretty good grip on the card to avoid damaging it. I thought it'd be fun to compare the cards side by side. Looking past the amount of dust that's built up over the 2 years this card's been used, the 760 almost makes the 6850 look like a toy. Not to mention the performance improvements the 760 will bring to the table. Getting back to my ghetto power situation, here's what I'm working with. The only PCI power connectors my power supply has are 2 6-pin connectors. The GTX 760 came with a dual 6 to 8 pin adapter, but I'll still need an additional 6-pin power to power the card properly. What I have to do is convert 2 Molex connectors to a 6-pin connector via a power converter cable. What this will end up giving me is a third 6-pin power connector. I'll then use 2 of the 6-pin connectors to make a single 8-pin connector, giving me the 2 required connections. From here, I'll route the power cables through my hidden spaghetti to the front of the computer to be plugged into the card. Now comes the time to install the new 760 into the system. After lining the card up with the slot, giving a little push will seat the card properly into place. The card is then secured with the 2 screws that were removed earlier. The final step in the installation is to plug the power cables in. Once again, I have a native 6-pin power cable as well as my newfound ghetto 8-pin connector. At this point, it really is as simple as plugging the connectors right into the card. They only go in one way, so it's pretty hard to mess this up. Once those connectors are plugged in, the card installation is complete. The look of the new card definitely beats that of the old card, at least in my opinion. The amount of cables behind the motherboard make this side a bit difficult to close, so I have to be careful not to pinch any of them when closing it up. The other side goes on very easily, and I have to say, I really like the look of the new card in combination with the transparent side panel and the Apple logo. After booting up OS X, the card is recognized perfectly without any modifications or kernel extension installs. That's all I had for the installation of my GTX 760 graphics card. Feel free to check out the RocheTechnology forums for any questions you may have. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter and this video a big fat like, and I'll see you guys back here very soon.